And it is a privilege to be able to be here and share with you on our next generation service. It is so fun to be here. I've been here on staff for just over 5 years now, and my wife and I, we got married here at this church 5 years ago, and we have 2 kids now, 3 years old. Our son is Max, and our 1-year-old, his name's Clay, and we just absolutely love being part of this church and serving our next generation, our youth and preteens and our kids ministries. It's just a lot of fun. God's doing a lot of cool things in our young people these days. And so if you don't know me well, as many of you don't, I've actually been in youth ministry for 11 years now. And so I've been working with teenagers for 11 years. I know you're like, huh, you look like you're 23 and like work out every day. 31, right here. I've been in youth ministry for 11 years, and I absolutely love working with teenagers. There's something special about walking through that tough period of their life with teenagers and watching them turn to Jesus and grow in their faith. And I do lots of coaching and stuff in the community and stuff. It's awesome. And before I begin, I just want to brag about our next generation ministries for a second. Did you know we ran 2 VBSs, which is week-long kids program for ages 3 to 12, one during spring break, one during the summer. Both had like 150 kids registered, and we had like tons of volunteers, and many of your kids came. It was an amazing time. Pastor Kirsten and Aaron and Jeremiah and all the kids ministry gang, they do such a great job. And you need to know as well, we had this last year, a number of our high school students, they just felt a call from God to do something in their high schools, to reach out to their friends that go to their school. And so we had a number of students start youth alphas in their schools where they found a teacher that opened up their classroom at lunchtime, and they put up posters, and they got to talk about God with using Youth Alpha, which is a great tool for teenagers. It's amazing seeing our young people kind of step out in faith. We sent close to 40 young people on missions trips this year, on 3 different trips, and we just came back from iCamp, which you saw a video of, and there's something special about being in a room with like 120 young people, just giving everything for Jesus. So continue to pray for all our next generation ministries, our kids and preteens and youth and young adults. Continue to keep us in your prayers because we need a lot of it, and God is really doing a good work in their life. And if you're a teenager here and you've never been to our youth ministry, let me just give you a shameless plug. Why don't you join us this Friday night at 7:30 p.m. as we kick off our fall season. We're down at the warehouse, which is our warehouse campus, just the building right beside us. And you're invited. There's lots of new people every week, so please don't feel like you're like, I don't know anybody. There's lots of people that don't know anybody, and we'll connect you to some friends. All right. So to this morning, I'm going to be preaching from a verse that I read a number of weeks ago. It's from 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 1. And when I read this verse, it challenged me. It actually continues to challenge me. And so I thought this is a perfect verse to preach on this morning at our Next Gen service. And it says this, 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 1 says, it's Paul talking, and he says to his followers, to his people that have looking up to him, he says, follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. He says, hey, everybody, follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. He looks to his followers, to the people that are in his circle of influence, people that are looking up to him, and he says, guys, follow me as I follow Jesus. And so today I'm actually going to give you the big idea. I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm talking about right at the very beginning. Usually the whoever is speaking, it's like you talk, and then here's my big idea at the end. But today we're doing it a little different. We're going to have our big idea. This is what I'm talking about. I'm going to tell you right at the very beginning, and then I'm going to talk about it. So the big idea, it's actually a bit of a challenge to each one of us, and it's this. It says it on your outline. So as your outline says, be a Christ follower who is worth following. The challenge for today, the big idea today, is to be a Christ follower who is worth following. And today we're going to talk about 2 characteristics of Christ followers who are worth following. All right, you guys ready? Good. All right, me too. Now, hands up if you have a fish bowl at your house with fish in it. Some of you, okay? Not that many, wow. There's no fish in here, so if you're looking, there's no fish, okay? They're not hiding or anything. Now, I never really understood the idea of having a fish as a pet. I have to admit, I'm not very good with fish. I have fish sat 2 times in my life, and both times the fish died before the owner got home. So I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong. I'm Italian, so I think I maybe fed it too much. You know, like, eat more. That's what my mom always said. And so it doesn't work with a fish that has a stomach like that big. But if you're looking for like a fish sitter, I'm not your guy. But I just never really understood the concept of having a fish. You can't play with it. You know, they get mad at you when you like twirl, you know, when you like get them all rattled up. You can't cuddle with it. Can, I guess, but it's really weird cuddling with a fish. You can't like enjoy its company. In my opinion, and this is just my opinion, you can't really do anything with a fish. And not only that, but have you ever thought about the life that you're giving that fish? Okay, I'm not like an animal activist or anything, but that poor fish has to live its life out in the open for all to see, okay? It eats, sleeps, breathes, goes to the bathroom in front of everybody. Imagine in your house having no doors on the bathroom. That's how the fish feels. And it's like being in the Big Brother house or living with the Kardashians. It's like the cameras are always on. Sorry, the Kardashians is a horrible show. But it's like having the cameras are rolling all the time. People are watching, and there's no place for this fish to go. Its life is in the open for all to see. And that is just the life of a fish in a fishbowl. Do you ever put people in a fishbowl? Is there someone in your life whose every move you're interested in watching? Whose every move you analyze and every conversation you listen to because they're just in your fishbowl, you just watch every move? Is it your boss? Is it your spouse? Is it your pastor? Is it Pastor Darren? It's okay, he's not here. You can tell me. It is for me. Hopefully he's not going to watch the video. Do you ever wonder what word comes out of Darren's mouth the second after he stubs his toe? Because I do. Do you ever wonder when he wakes up in the morning what kind of hair product he uses? That's a bad example. Do you ever wonder if he actually practices what he preaches? I realize that I put people into my fishbowl all the time, where I watch and carefully analyze their every move. And the people that I put in my fishbowl the most are police officers. They're people that I analyze all the time. Do you ever do that? Don't you watch when a policeman's driving, coming up to a stop sign? Do you ever watch to see if they're going to obey the law and fully stop? I don't want to see no rolling stop, all right? I've gotten tickets for that rolling stop. I want to see a full stop, 3-second delay before you even think about moving again. Don't you ever watch when a police officer is sitting at a red light to see if he or she is going to illegally look at their phone? I do, because they're in my fishbowl. Don't you ever watch to see when a police officer is driving to see if their hands are on 10 and 2, like the book says? All right, not driving like this or like this. 10 and 2, because that is just what the book says. I put policemen into my fishbowl, and I watch their every move. I analyze their every move, listen to every conversation because of this. Because I want to see if what they represent, which is the law, which is justice, the right thing to do, I want to see if what they represent is really who they are. I want to see is what they represent is who they really are. And they don't have a choice to be in my fishbowl. That's just what I do to police officers. That's just what I do. And here's a news flash for you. Maybe you're sitting here and you call yourself a Christian. You're like, yes, I'm a Christian. As soon as you use those words, as soon as you say those things, you need to know, as soon as you do that, you automatically put yourself in a lot of people's fishbowls. You automatically put yourself, people are automatically analyzing and watching every single move that you do. And if you're sitting here and you're not a Christian, you've never accepted Jesus into your heart, I'm so glad that you're here with us this morning. I actually think the next few minutes will be very, very interesting for you to listen to. But as soon as you say, I'm a Christian, you put yourself in your barista's fishbowl, you put yourself in your coworker's fishbowl, in your boss's fishbowl, in your spouse's fishbowl, in your child's fishbowl. They're all watching because just like police officers, you represent something. You represent something. Just like Ronaldo represents soccer. Any soccer fans in the house? Yeah, a couple of you. Just like Justin Bieber represents girly music. Any Justin Bieber fans in the house? No. There was one guy in the... there we go, Graham. Thank you, Graham. There was one guy in the first service. He's like, I'm going to be brave, put up my hand. He was the only one, so I called him out on it. He's like, oh. Just like Don Cherry represents good old Canadian hockey. Yeah, there you go. Hockey fans in the house. If you call yourself a Christ follower, as your outline says, if you call yourself a Christ follower, people are watching to see if how you live lines up with what you represent. People are watching to see if how you live lines up with what you represent. In 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 12, we're going to read it here in a moment. Paul, who's the mentor in this passage, he's the mentor and he's talking to his mentee, Timothy. And so Paul, he's writing to Timothy, who's a young pastor who has a lot of people watching him. He's a young pastor who's in a place of leadership and he has people around him, Timothy does, watching his every move. He has a congregation watching him every single moment of every day. He has people in the city carefully analyzing every move he makes because he's the young pastor in town. Timothy, when we read this, he is in a lot of people's fishbowls. And so Paul, as his mentor, he realizes this. And he realizes that there's a lot of eyeballs on Timothy at all times. And listen to what he says here. 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 12. He says, don't let anyone look down on you because you are young, but set an example. You're going to want to underline those three words. But set an example for the believers in speech, in life, in love, in faith, and in purity. He says, Timothy, listen, you are in a fishbowl whether you want to or not. People are watching you. You need to set an example in speech. Don't make those bad jokes you used to make in the past. Set an example in life. Don't be a stumbling block for anyone. In love, let your heart break for people. Care for them. Set an example in your faith. Show people, Timothy, how to rely on God. And in purity, he says, Timothy, let me raise that bar for you. Keep your mind clean and don't compromise. See, Paul, the mentor, is urging Timothy, the mentee, to be an example because people are watching to see if how he lives lines up with what he represents. Paul's calling him to a higher standard, and he urges him to raise the bar in his life so he won't be a stumbling block for people. He raises the bar for Timothy so that Timothy would represent Jesus well. In your outline, number one of a Christ follower worth following, number one is this: they strive to set an example in all areas of life. A Christ follower who is worth following strives to set an example in all areas of life. If you're here and you're a Christ follower, if you call yourself a Christian, God calls you to be an example to people around you. He calls you to be an example to your coworkers. He calls you to be an example to your kids and your families. And if you're a parent, let me talk to you parents here for a second, because as the next generation service, let me talk to you for a second. You need to know that your kids are looking at you to see if you are a Christ-like example. Whether you like it or not, whether you want it or not, you are in their fish bowls. As soon as you walk through the door after work, as soon as you're in the same room as them, when you're cooking dinner, when you're laying on the couch, you are in your child's fishbowl. They look at you to see the types of shows that you watch. They look at you to see the type of language that you use. They look at you to see how you react when you get angry. They look at you to see how you treat your spouse. The fact is, your kids need you to show them what a godly dad looks like. Your kids need you to show them what a godly mom looks like. They need to see you leading by example and reading your Bible by your bedside and doing your devotions. They need to see you serving at the church. They need to see you tithing. They need to see you raising your hands in worship and worshiping Jesus. It's not the church's job to teach your children all of that. We're here to reinforce those values, but you need to teach and model those things at home. Amen? Amen. Let me tell you, our next generation ministries, all our ministries that impact people, young people under 25, we work hard at helping train and disciple our young people and our kids. We work hard at mentoring them and setting the bar for them, and we send them on mission trips where we train them for months, and we have training programs, and we do all of that to help them grow in their faith. But it's most effective when we're reinforcing what you are already teaching and modeling for them at home. So parents, just like Paul raised the bar for Timothy, let me raise that bar for you today. I urge you to be a Christ follower who is worth following and set an example in all areas of life for your children, because you know what? They really, really need it. Amen? Amen. When I was in grade 10, I went to a Christian high school. I went to Pacific Academy, and every year they sent missions teams to go on mission trips during spring break. And so at the beginning of the year, in September, October-ish, all the teams, and there was a number of them, that were all going to go on the trip during spring break, they all went on a retreat together. And it was a great time for team bonding and a great time to, get to know the other team members. And we had chapel services where we learned about God and grew closer to God. And it was after one of these chapel services where I walked out, and there was a few minutes to kill before lunchtime. And I remember my friend, he gave me one of these. Now, that's a guy version of like, come over here. And I gave him one of these. That's just classic guy talk. We don't communicate very well. And so, but I knew exactly what he was talking about. So I walked over and he was calling me over to go in his, what we thought was really cool at the time, his 1995 Dodge Caravan that his mother owned. And so we sat in his car like we always did. And we sat there and turned up the music and on this missions trip retreat where we're training to be like missionaries and learning to get closer to God, right after our chapel services, we were sitting in his mom's minivan, rocking out with music blasting to some of the worst music, with some of the worst language and inappropriate lyrics that you could ever imagine. And you know what as I look back on it, the crazy part is? It actually didn't even faze me at all. It didn't even faze me at all that I was living this double life. I grew up as someone that I like to call a chameleon Christian. A chameleon Christian. And so we all know what a Christian is. It's someone that has accepted Jesus into their heart. But what's a chameleon? Well, chameleons are as a reptile that's part of the iguana family. And the characteristic that is most unique for chameleons is they could adapt to whatever environment that they're in. So if they're on a tree, the chameleon could adapt its color to look more like a tree. If it's sitting in a pile of grass, it could adapt its color to look more like the pile of grass. They have the ability to adapt to their environment. As your outline says, the reality is chameleon Christians exist. Chameleon Christians exist. Now, chameleon Christians, they say they're Christians, just like I did when I was in grade 10. They always believe in God. They can go to church. Under their Facebook page, under religious views, they would check Christian, but they live like he doesn't exist. Chameleon Christians, just like the animal, they adapt to their environment. On Sunday, they look like one person, but if you saw them on Monday, they look like a totally different person. Chameleon Christians, they don't care that they're in people's fishbowls. In Titus chapter 1, there's a great description of what people with chameleon characteristics do. It says this: they claim to know God, but by their actions, they deny him. Chameleon Christians, they say one thing, but they do another. Their lifestyle doesn't add up with what they say they represent. Chameleon Christians, they say they know God, but they don't allow him to fully change their life. Chameleon Christians may call themselves Christians, but they misrepresent what that really means. Chameleon Christians can come from any walk of life. They can be at any age, at any stage of life. But since I'm a youth pastor, and it's the next generation service, let me talk to the parents again, just for a moment. Parents, you need to know that if you're here and you're a chameleon Christian, the people that it affects most is your children. The people that it affects most is your children. Like I said, I've been working with teenagers for a long time, and so I know that they need, and you know this too, they need to have a Christ-like example in your life. So maybe you're a grandparent or an uncle or an aunt. Maybe you don't have little kids at home, but maybe you have nieces and nephews and grandchildren. I challenge you to be that example to them. Maybe you are the only Christ-like example in their life. But no matter what stage of life you're in, whether you're a high school student or a senior citizen, maybe you're here and you have not been striving to be a Christ-like example to people in your life. Maybe you've been a chameleon Christian for a while now. Well, in a few moments, when I close in a few moments, I'm going to give you an opportunity to say, I don't want to be that person anymore. I want to give you an opportunity to make a decision to say, I want to start now to set an example for people in my life. I'm going to do that in a few moments. But first, let's recap a little bit. Our big idea this morning, our challenge that I'm putting out there today is this: to be a Christ follower who is worth following. We talked about how, as Christians, we need to raise that bar in our life. We're in people's fishbowls. People are watching us all the time, especially if you have kids. We need to strive to set that example. The goal is to be able to say what Paul said in 1 Corinthians 11. The goal is to be able to say, hey, follow my example. Kids, follow my example. Coworkers, follow my example. Friends, follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. So as I close, I want to touch on one last point. So you read that verse. Paul wasn't saying, follow me because I have good habits. He wasn't saying, follow me because I have my life all together. Paul wasn't saying, follow me because I watch Dr. Phil and know how to solve all the problems in my life. He says, follow me as I follow the example of Christ. So what does it look like to follow that example of Christ? Well, we don't have to look any farther than looking at Jesus Christ himself when he was here on the earth. When he was here on the earth, he lived his life in full surrender to God. Everything he did was in full surrender to God. The night before Jesus was crucified, he surrendered himself to God's plan. He prayed this prayer. In Mark chapter 14, it says, Father, everything is possible for you. Please take this cup of suffering away from me. He said, God, if I don't have to get crucified, if I don't have to go through it, please take that away from me. Yet I want your will, not mine. Yet I want your will, not mine. In another version, the contemporary English version, that last line is translated into this: but do what you want and not what I want. As your outline says, a Christ follower who is worth following continually surrenders every part of their life to God. Continually surrenders every part of their life to God. Are you holding on to your parts of your life today that you don't want to surrender to God? Are there corners of your heart that are hard and that you haven't allowed God to change? Have you been living a life of a chameleon Christian who says one thing but does another? Are you a boss that doesn't represent Jesus well? Are you a student that's one way at church but a different way around your friends? Do you need to be a better example as a neighbor or a parent or a coworker? This morning I want to ask, are you a Christ follower worth following? We're going to play one last song the band's going to lead us in, and it's all about surrendering our life to God. The words are, I'll stand with arms high and heart abandoned. And I challenge you, if you're here and you're holding on to parts of your life, maybe you've been living like a chameleon Christian, one way at church and a different way at work or school, I challenge you to surrender that part of your life to God. Pray to Him during this next song. Say to Him, God, I surrender it to you. God, I give you my life. I give you my heart. I give you my all. I give you my mind. I give you my actions. I give you my future. I give it all to you. I challenge you, you can even raise your hands as a sign, say, God, I surrender to you. But I challenge you, what is that thing that you're holding on to this morning? So why don't we all stand together as the band leads us in this last song?